I've seen a lot of talk about gaming's ability to make us feel things, and how they can help players cope with situations in their lives. We see people like Ryan Green creating games to cope with the loss of a child, and Hamish Black, who inspired this video, by the way, talking about games like Dark Souls helping them cope with depression. I've cried at games before, but I thought I'd never feel that kind of deep, emotional connection with any title until I played Kent Hudson's story-driven narrative exploration about a writer and his struggle to keep himself and his family happy, The Novelist. Now, to be clear, this isn't something I'd necessarily consider good. Apart from the shallow characters, omission of any interesting mechanics, and kind of lackluster writing, The Novelist shares a lot of the same problems that most choose-your-own-adventure games have. While there are decisions to be made throughout the course of the experience, they don't really mean a whole lot. They affect the way the characters feel in the next chapter, sure, but the choices don't alter anything in regards to the progression of the plot. That being said, I didn't find myself connecting with The Novelist because it's some deeply interwoven experience that transcends anything Telltale's done. No, in fact, I connected with this game for a reason that's a little more personal. About a year ago, certain things in my life took a turn for the worse. Nothing major, but it was enough to get me feeling pretty low. I wasn't really talking to a lot of people for a while. I felt alone even if I really wasn't, and I don't know, I just wasn't happy. I was put in a position where I couldn't choose for myself anymore. What put me in this state of perpetual depression was something that was almost completely out of my control. As a result, I spent a lot of time worried about how things would turn out for me, and I would become easily stressed out in the simplest of situations. I wasn't in a good place anymore. Then, in March of last year, I played The Novelist for the first time, and on only the first day in the game, I was presented with a scenario that left me feeling horrible. You see, The Novelist follows the Kaplan family, father Dan, wife Linda, and their son, Tommy. They had just moved out to a new home for the summer to get away from town and the bullies that were harassing their son. The focus of the experience is for you, as some sort of ghostly apparition, to make decisions for the family during certain situations in their lives. But you can only make one decision and one compromise, meaning at the very least, one person won't get what they want. I thought nothing of this at first, but once I spent more time getting to know the family, reading about their feelings and peering into their thoughts, I could no longer easily make that decision. I've lived my whole life trying to please everyone, and in most games it's doable to some sort of extent, but here I knew that I couldn't. And in knowing that, I got really stressed out. I just didn't know what to do. Dan, a published novelist, was going through writer's block and hated hitting a wall with his work, so he wanted to sit down and spend the night getting past it. At the same time, his wife Linda wanted to spend the night with the man that she felt was neglecting her. Divorce was looming in the air, and she'd started to feel less important to him than the words on his pages. Then their son Tommy, who had just spent a year at school being bullied, wanted nothing more than to play a board game with his father, who he looked up to more than anyone else. And when I figured this all out, when I finally found all that I needed to in order to make a thoughtful decision, I had to think about it for so much longer than I thought I would. Do I give Dan the time he needs to get past his writer's block? I mean, he wants this book to do well, and if it doesn't, then that means no more money for the family. But then he's neglecting Linda, and she's already worried about an impending divorce. Do I have Dan neglect his wife for the sake of his work, or do I have him spend the night with her and put his work on the back burner? And then there's Tommy. How do I fit in time for Dan to play a board game with his kid? Should he neglect his wife and instead spend time with his son? Or should he neglect his son, who so desperately wants his father to love him, in order to prop up his crumbling marriage? I just don't know. I must have spent at least 10 minutes on that choice, even more than I spent reading letters from the family to come to my conclusion. Of course, I later found out that my choices didn't really impact a whole lot in the game, but picking the outcome that I did, and getting past the fear of making a choice for the people in this fictional world, meant so much more to me than the way the rest of the game played out. Because after that, I wasn't playing the game to see what happened to the family. I was playing it to come to grips with making choices that, as far as I knew, I may have never gotten the chance to make. And once I finished the story and saw how my outcomes played out, I was content. For the first time in that brief period in my life, I got past a series of tough but hypothetical choices. And when I started reading reviews of the game that shared a similar sentiment of anxiety and feeling the weight of not being able to please everyone, risking them hating you for it, I started to work past what was holding me down for so long. I started to become comfortable again with making choices in my day-to-day life. I know it might be a bit cliche to say that a piece of media helped me get past something tough that I was experiencing, but I think it speaks to the power that media, especially video games, have to be therapeutic for those going through a rough time. After reading stories of the time different players spent with The Novelist and other titles like it, I stopped feeling so alone in my condition. We're all, of course, aware of things like this, but those that are in it often forget that they're not alone. It took experiencing media that explored these themes, that had characters experiencing depression and anxiety or less than pleasant lives to really figure that out for myself. And whether it was reading the experiences of other people that tried their best to help this fictional family, or myself watching an aging 80s sitcom star deal with falling into obscurity, it helped me come to terms with what was happening. And in the end, I was reminded that even though it may feel like it, you're not alone.